Hi, all. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Tara Wolfanger, and we're here for Shining a Spotlight on Sheets. So I'm going to go ahead and get started sharing with you. So this is part of a Google series that focuses on each application individually, and this one is Google Sheets. I start with a disclaimer that check your data and privacy and security settings for your district. Please follow those guidelines. We strongly encourage you to read the privacy practices and take no responsibility, near Google or myself, for anything shared here. So who am I? I am Tara Wolfinger. I'm a Google certified trainer. I'm also a fifth grade teacher at Mahonison Central Schools. My contact information is there, tara@gfe-trainer.com. Feel free to email me at any time, any questions or concerns about anything after this webinar is concluded. I'm happy to help troubleshoot for you. If I do not know the answer, I have access to a network of thousands of Google trainers across the globe that I'm sure we could get the answer for you. So I know time is super valuable. Let's jump right in. Our goals and norm for today. So we're going to talk about why do you use Google Sheets, take a tour of Sheets with some foundational information and vocabulary. We'll talk about each menu item from your top toolbar. We'll talk about different ways to use Sheets. And when we get there, there are tons of templates included in this presentation for you to use. Then there's some helpful links and other things. And then I invite you to take the time to test things out and do what you're needed. So let's get started with the why. Why would you use Google Sheets? Google Sheets is married to Google Forms, which many of you are using or will be soon, as it's another Google app that's super helpful in collecting data immediately for you. Google Sheets has a tremendous ability to organize and make sense of a large amount of data that saves you time. So you can organize data from multiple teachers, from multiple buildings across the district, all into one Google Sheet, and it will organize it for you seamlessly. It can also be used as formative assessment, instruction, and creative assignments across curricular areas. So when we get to those templates, you'll see Google Sheets is a spreadsheet, but it can be used for so much more than a spreadsheet too. So before we start on the presentation, and if you click this image, it'll make a copy of a sample Google Sheet that you can use during this workshop, so that if you don't have access to one right now, this is just a sample one that you can manipulate as we go through. So let's get started with a quick tour of Sheets. Basic Sheets terminology, so things you need to know just to jump right in. That top bar is called the function bar. Rows go side to side, columns go up and down. A sheet, the whole workbook, the whole document is a workbook. A sheet is one single tab, so to speak, across the bottom. And a cell is one part of the sheet. So a cell is where a row hits a column. The Explore button on the bottom right corner there, if you select that and click it, it's magic. It will pull up all of your options for different cells, different columns, different rows. That's a whole thing you can explore for lots of detail on each one. When you enter data into Sheets, it's often easier to edit the data in the function bar across the top than in the cell itself. That's especially true in the case of text. If it's a longer text, you can see it run right across the function bar a lot easier than you can see it within a cell. To enter within a cell, you have to hold Control Enter to force it into that cell. If you just hit Enter in general, it takes you to the next cell. You can force a line break within one cell as long as you Control Enter. When selecting cells, rows, and columns, if you click on the empty box in the top left corner, it selects the entire sheet, highlights everything for you. If you click on a number along the left, it selects that entire row. If you click on a letter across the top, it selects that entire column. To select multiple rows, columns, or cells, hold down the Shift key while you are clicking. The drag and drop downfill square is that little blue square in the bottom right corner when you have a box selected. More information is on that there. It will automatically populate for you what's happening. So if you type chapter 1, chapter 2, and then autofill, it will read it and autofill chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5, and so on. If you have the same thing typed over and over again, so, in that D column, if I had senior, 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 and I autofill, it will autofill anywhere I drag with that same senior. Adding and manipulating sheets. So across that bottom toolbar, you can add a new sheet with the plus sign, toggle to existing sheets. We call that the hamburger menu. We'll show you each of the sheets you have in that workbook. When you select a sheet, it has the delete, duplicate, copy, all of those things to each sheet within that menu. You can also drag and drop sheets to reorder them. And a single spreadsheet can have any number of sheets within it. So it can have any number of those tabs right across the bottom well within it. A pro note on that, copy to, when you go to the copy to option, you will have the option to copy it within this workbook or to a new workbook. So if you have a sheet here that you're trying to mesh with someone else and you want to share that sheet to them, you're going to copy it to that new workbook right there. The menu items. Now you have your content, you have your kind of basics of how a Google Sheet looks. What can you do with all of those things? The header menu options are pretty similar to any Google application. You have the title, you have the folder where you can move it within your Drive, comment or view history, viewing and sharing history, Google Sheets homepage, and modifying the sharing settings for the file right on the right there. Then when you jump into each individual menu within a Google Sheet, some are very similar to other Google apps with some additions that are specific to Sheets. So in your file menu, you have the typical ones you have on most: new, open, import, copy. Download, you can download it as an Excel file or a CVS, which is helpful when you're transferring data to another program. If you're using it strictly in a teaching format, I would suggest downloading into an Excel file. A CVS can sometimes format a little bit differently. If you need it to transfer into a different system, that's one thing. But if that's not something you do regularly, I wouldn't recommend that being your first bet for it. All the other options from the file menu are the same as the other menus in G Suite apps or Google Workspace apps, Docs, and Slides. The edit menu starts the same as most of them and then has a few specific to Google Sheets. So undo, redo, cut, copy, paste are all the same as are in any Google app. Then that second section there is dealing with the Google Sheets specifically. So if you delete a value of the cell, it won't delete the cell. If you delete the row or column, it deletes everything in that column. So that's your pro tip. When you delete row 8, for example, there, it will delete everything in that row. If that's not what you want to do, make sure you just hit the undo button. And at the bottom, there'll be more about notes and checkboxes later, but that's where you would remove them from the edit menu if you'd like. The view menu comes up next. The pro tip, most helpful thing I think most people are unaware of in Google Sheets is freezing. So if you use that first, freeze, it allows you to freeze the rows or columns for easy viewing or scrolling. So let's say you have student names across your left column 1 and you're scrolling over many tabs. You can freeze one column and the names will stay there as you scroll. It does not impact anything you have input. It's just your viewing of it. So it stays there while you scroll through. The rest of the controls are options for spreadsheets. So grid lines are just what you see around the boxes. There's more in protected ranges in a little bit. It determines who can view and edit a particular Google Sheet, shows your formula, zoom, and full screen. Now getting into the insert menu. So the insert menu is very in-depth. There are a lot of things that can be inserted into a Google Sheet. So you can insert rows above or below the current row you're clicked on. Same thing with columns, left or right of the current column you're clicked on. If you insert a form, it creates a new form with a new spreadsheet already linked to the bottom. Insert a function. You can do anything from calculating averages to translating sentences. If you click on that link there, it will bring up a list of possible functions, and there are hundreds of them. There are functions for just about anything that you can imagine. In just a minute, we'll talk about 2 common functions that I think most teachers use, the sum and the average, but that will list all of them for you. You can insert a link, a checkbox. That's a great feature for checking things off. So if you have a Google Sheet that lists things you need to do, you can insert a column with checkboxes and it does exactly what you would think. It checks it off when you click it. The comment and note, both notes and comments are extra info on the sheet that you're adding in. If you click on that link, it shows you the difference. And the last option is to insert a new sheet at the bottom of the workbook. That's the same thing we just went over on the bottom menu where you hit the plus sign new sheet. It's the same idea of new sheet. It's just a different way to insert it. So common functions and formulas. We're going to watch a little video. So a common formula or function that you could use in Google Sheets is the sum function. And that does exactly what you would think. It adds things up. So that could be used to add the points onto an assignment, add the points of a homework through. So for my example here, I have a weekly homework chart, and the students either get 0, 1, or 2 on it. And I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I want the weekly total to automatically add up for me. So there's 2 ways to insert the formula or function of a sum. You need your equal sign, type sum, S-U-M. Parentheses will tell you what numbers you want added up. So in this case, I'm going to highlight B2 to E2 because those are the numbers that I want them to add. Always end your function with a parentheses. Anything in there is your area. Hit the enter button and it automatically adds it up. You can also insert a formula or function by going to insert, function, sum. And again, I'll have those parentheses to select what I want it to add up. So I'm going to highlight that row. I want it to add up there. Hit enter, and it adds it up. Now, once I've put the sum function in one of these places of the column, I can take my blue corner, drag and drop, and drag it down, and it will automatically fill that function into everything highlighted in that column. So that was just quickly how to use sum. So a common formula or function that you could use that adds things up just as it does within. Another common function is the average. Let's watch how to do that. So a common formula or function to use in Google Sheets for educators is the average function. It does exactly what you think. It creates an average of some numbers. So for my demonstration, I have some test scores, tests 1 through 3, and I want to find out the test average for each person on those 3 tests. So that, again, there are 2 ways that you can do this. You click in your cell, go to insert, function, average. Then inside those parentheses, you need to tell them what numbers you want it to average. So I want it to average across these people. Hit enter, and it will average. Now it's suggesting an autofill because it reads my column header as test average and assumes that the rest will be average as all. You can just hit the check mark to do that and autofill it. I'm going to not, so I can show you the other way. Remember, equal sign. Start to type average. It'll come up. Select your average function. Highlight what numbers you want it to average. Always end a function in a parentheses. Enter makes it happen. Once you have the average function put in, drag and drop it down the column, and it will do so. Also, to show you some number formatting, in this case, it has unlimited decimal places here. So I'm going to highlight this column and go up to my decrease decimal in my toolbar here. And I don't want any decimals. I just want a whole number rounded for their averages. So those 2 functions tend to be the most used, most helpful for educators. So the next menu, a format menu. So if you format the top one there, theme, that changes the color scheme of graphs and charts within it. Now to get into the number formatting that was shown at the end of the other video, you can format a number, plain text, number, percent, scientific, all these different currency, date, time. It controls how it appears. If you want it as it's originally typed, just make sure you have plain text selected. Automatic will sometimes adjust it if it thinks you're trying to put in something else, but as long as you have plain text, it will do it. Otherwise, it can automatically represent them as such. The rest of that middle section is the same as any Google Docs forms sheets, the bold, italics, underline, strike through, font, and alignment. That bottom one is important to know, clear formatting. That removes any formatting that was previously done on that cell. So if you don't want it to do those things anymore, you're just going to clear it. Those middle part of your format menu, the align is in the cell will appear with left, right, center, but because it's a cell, you can also align it to top, middle, or bottom. Merging cells combines or separates 2 or more selected cells. So if you highlight across 2 or 3 cells and you want it all combined into one, maybe a header, you're going to merge those cells together. Text wrapping, this is one of the best features. It allows the cells to expand longer and wrap the text. Just like you read in a book, it just automatically goes to the next line. Conditional formatting automatically changes the format on a cell, a font and color based on the contents of the cell. It's great for formative assessments. So there's some more on that later. And alternating colors is kind of like if you think back to the old school grade books where you had a line of green, a line of white, a line of green, a line of white. That's what an alternating color would do. It helps you distinguish the content if you have a lot to kind of scroll through. So that's your pro tip. On a sheet with a number of rows, alternating the colors helps to follow it much easier. The data menu. So some of the data options are really complex, and that link there will take you to a menu to help explain that if you're ready to go there. But just some kind of basics of the data menu. Those first two options will sort a single column. You can sort it A to Z or Z to A backwards. The pro tip is if you sort by a column, all of the other columns will automatically adjust to meet what you sorted. A filter, you filter out particular data. So if you only want to see values that have a B, C period B, that have a certain grade, that have a certain characteristic in them, you can filter to only view those. You can make multiple columns from a single one if you split the text into columns. So if you have a cell that has a full name and you want to split it into last name and first name, you can split the text to that. Just my only caution with that is it has to be formatted exactly as such. So if it has full name, if you have Tara Wolfhanger, it'll split it into Tara and Wolfhanger. If it has Tara A. Wolfhanger, it'll split it into Tara and A. Wolfhanger. So make sure if you're splitting it that your information is formatted correctly. And then removing duplicates or trimming white space can be useful. If you accidentally, someone puts in the same information on a couple of rows, it will automatically remove it for you. To continue with the data menu, if you sort the range, that's similar to sorting by the sheet, but it will only sort the range that you have selected. So anything outside of what you selected, anything outside of that range will not be sorted. If you check the data has a header row box, that means the header will stay as it is, and then everything else will be sorted. Data validation allows you to set certain criteria on particular cells. So if you're inputting grades and it's a 0 to 100, you can set a data validation. If you accidentally put something outside of that in there, it won't allow you. It'll tell you it doesn't fit the data. The tools menu. So from the tools menu, you can create a new Google form that will link right to the existing spreadsheet. It's the same as if you went in and created another form, but it links it automatically right there. The script editors and macros, those are really advanced features that can be great for having Sheets format responses for you. So there's a link there if you want to dive more into those options. Autocomplete, if it detects a pattern, it will auto number. Like on my example, when it wanted to autofill the average, it detected that it was an average column, that I had put in an average formula, and it would autofill that for me. Notification rules might be set by your domain. It depends if it allows notifications from Google applications or not, but you can change what emails you get about that spreadsheet. And then the protected sheet. So this is what I consider kind of the sharing settings on steroids. So it controls who can access or edit particular sheets, columns, and cells. So you can share the Google Sheet with them and protect one of the tabs, and then they cannot edit that tab. So for example, if you have the first tab is a template and then the next two tabs are each period and you want to share it out so that they can see the other two, but you don't want them to edit or adjust that first tab, you're going to protect that sheet so that they can't edit on it. Then you have a menu for forms. So this menu only appears if Sheets is already connected to a form, and they allow you to interact directly with the form. So it's just like opening up a new tab with the form in it. It just does it directly from Google Sheets for you. So the toolbar options, so many of these are the same as we just went through in the menu bar, but they're just quick click access for you right on the top of your Google Sheet. Undo, redo. Paint format is nice. So if you format a cell, for example, if it's bold, if it's italic, if it's a certain size font, and you want that cell to go to another cell, you're going to click on the paint roller and click the other cell that you want formatted the same way, and it will automatically carry that format to it. That middle section is shortcuts to the number formatting. So that's when we talked about the currency, the percentage, increasing decimals, decreasing decimals. A pro tip is you can increase or decrease the decimal points right from that toolbar. So like I did in my video, my averages had unlimited decimals. I just wanted it a whole number. I hit just 2 quick clicks right there and it was done. To continue with the toolbar menu across the top, the paint bucket is a fill color. This is not your font color. This is almost like, think of it as the background, the wall color of the cell. You can fill it a different color. The window, I call it to my students, icon controls what grid lines you show. So if you want surrounding grid lines, just the top, just the bottom, you can have all different options there. Merge and unmerge cells. That's that left, right, center option. That second one is one that's most forgetter or not familiar with. Again, you can format it at a top, middle, or bottom alignment as well. So if you have a cell that's pretty big and you want it into the middle so it looks like it's through the whole thing, that would be where you want to do it. The next one has several exclamation points with it because I told you that's a huge one to me. Text wrap. There'll be an option to wrap it right around. So as you keep typing, it automatically wraps for you. Otherwise, it will go on one big, huge line, and at the end of the cell, it will cut off. Text angle. So let's say you have something in that first column that you want shifted so that it goes across. You can change the angle of that. You can link a cell, insert a column, a chart or graph, a filter view, and then that function, you can insert a function right from that main toolbar as well. Your right-click options are pretty standard to what most right-click options applications. There's only minor choices that vary. If you right-click a column, you have all of those options there to cut, copy, clear, insert, sort. Same thing if you click a row, cut, copy, delete, or a cell. So again, they're pretty much similar to any right-click options, and they're all also options that are above that menu. It's just kind of that shortcut way to get there. So now that we've talked about kind of the basics, the foundations of Google Sheets, we've talked about all of your menu choices, all of your toolbars, all of the things that you can format and do in Google Sheets. What do you do with them? So I know I have them. I know how to put in numbers. What's my practical classroom use? What can I do? I'm going to present to you several options. I think there's 11 or 12. Please do not feel overwhelmed with trying them. I just wanted people to really have them. The other great thing about this presentation and webinar is each of these contains a template that is already pre-made for you with this format. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's there. You just have to click on the images or where it says to open up a template for that way. So let's dive in. A reminder, any of the following Google Sheet ideas can be generated by a Google form that the students fill out. So they create the data and then you just do things with it. So you're not reinventing, you're not taking all of their information and inputting into the sheet. It will generate right from the form for you. So what can you do? You can make scavenger hunts, bingo cards, crosswords, game boards, tournament brackets, timelines. If you click on each of those images, it will bring you to a direct link to one of those options. So if you click a tournament bracket, it brings you to how to set up a tournament bracket, including make a copy of this template to do that. And there are even more on flippity.net if you want to explore more, but let's dive into some of them. You can make flashcards or quiz games. This is one you might want to check with your district or your domain if they have permission to use them, because it does collect certain information about student names. You can make anonymous ones. It just won't save their progress, but they can go on and take these Quizlets or quizzes, and then it exports it from right to a sheet for them. You can also make a monthly budget. You can make a pro and con. So if you have students that, maybe are in a career development or are working on some kind of mathematic budget, you want to do that. If you click right on that image, it will bring you right to a template that automatically has a budget formatting kind of set for them, where they just need to put in the information and they can adjust it as they need as such. Now, when you click this template, these templates, it's going to ask you to make a copy first. I do not have to make a copy because I own them, but it will ask you to do that. You can make a timeline. So again, if you click that image, it will have a timeline auto-generated for you that students can then input into. Importing data to make a map. So this one is a bit more advanced, which is why I included a video with it as well. But if you have a sheet that has a point of information, in this case it was animals, a location, you can transfer that into a map using that location. Again, there's a couple more steps to this one. It's a little bit more advanced, but if you're someone that's working in geography or social studies and wants to use this, check that slide out. You can help students just visualize data with charts. So each image in this slide has the template for a pie chart and a bar graph. But a pro tip is if you selected data range and use that explore button. So remember way back in the bottom or way back in the beginning, I said that bottom right corner explore button, it will suggest an appropriate chart for you. So it'll read your information and let you know that this is a good bar chart, this is a good pie graph. Those kind of things. So the one on the left, it was a pie graph because it's percentage of students. The one on the right was different numbers for different percentages. The charts will change as you change the data. So if you, as your data is in your cells and you insert your chart, and then let's say you go back and realize one of the numbers is wrong and you need to adjust them, if you adjust it in your sheet, it will automatically change in the chart for you. So you don't have to worry about going and redoing the chart each time. All right, so this is kind of like golden ticket for me. Huge time saver, helpful for anybody in education. It can do self-grading assessments. What does that mean? So you're asking students to complete a Google Sheet. You're going to input conditional formatting into that. And that where it says click here is the directions and templates. And the video just gives you a video pictorial of how to do that too. So you're going to put in a conditional format that the correct answers are green and the incorrect answers are red. When the students then put their answers into the cell, it will do that. It'll turn green or it'll turn red. And then you just let students know that they cannot move on until they get it green. They have to input the correct answer. So it's nice because there's no real way to fake it. There's no real way for them to not do it because you can quickly see if it's green or red. So you could have, as a teacher, you could have your computer up and you're looking at the sheet of 20 different students and you're automatically quickly telling who's green, who's red. And then, you can see if a student is stuck on a specific problem in red for quite a while, to go and see them directly, where the other student that's been green across the board, you don't need to worry about as much. The only caution I have with this is you have to conditionally format it exactly how you want them to put it in. So this does not work well for like short answer text or things that they really are going to type an opinion or type a long response to. This does work really well for numbers, for yes or no, true, false, multiple choice, those kind of things, because it has to be input to conditionally format exactly as it does. But if you, as long as they do that, it will conditional format and they can automatically see that the answer is correct or the answer is not. And then you as the teacher have the freedom to decide if it's a red and it's not correct, do you want them to leave that so you can see a red, or do you want them to keep persisting through that problem until they get it right? But this is a huge time saver, huge benefit. You definitely want to save this template. You definitely want to look into these to make your life so much easier with students. You can also make an activity log. So these two are just two examples that I use, but the pro tip is this could easily track log hours of anything: music, study skills, reading, anything. Again, the directions and templates are there of what their student's goal is, how many current they've done. The left has the hours and pages, right? I just did a sample. If you're using it, maybe as a coach or as a physical education teacher, weightlifting goals. There are just so many ways that it will track it automatically for them because the functions are already put in. Generate random writing prompts. So the directions and templates are there, and then an example is on the slide if you click. This could also be used to generate any random pairings for student groups. So it's really about a column A and a column B, and it will automatically pair those two things together. So if you put students in each column, random generate, it will automatically group them together. It could also randomly assign students a topic. So if you're doing a research project on animals and you just want students randomly assigned an animal so that there's no confusion or frustration over who got what animal, you just put your students into one column, animals into the other, random list prompts, auto random generate it, and it will automatically just match them. So that's super helpful to just make something more randomized and students don't feel frustrated. It's the luck of the draw. You can even make art. So I was trying to think a little bit out of the box for my special area folks. I am not an artist. I don't really draw on the board or on paper, but I Google sheet art is something that I could do. So you can make pixel art. Again, the directions and templates are there that automatically has this preset for you. There's also ways that they can do different fractions. They can make almost like think of, those used when you colored it, you got the answer of a math problem and you colored it a certain number. These sheets will do that for you. You can make a notebook for a class. So this one is super interesting and something I personally am just really diving into this year. But you essentially use each tab as a different page of your notebook, as a different section. So you'd have your cover. This one has assignments, journal, class notes. And then once you're in the assignments tab is that other screenshot to the right there. They would have the date, the assignment, and any notes they need to put with it. Their learning journal, they can type out topic, already knew. Notes is where they're inputting it. But it sections it out automatically for them. So it's just another way to organize a notebook for a class, especially if your class maybe is fully virtual and you want students taking notes, but you don't have the ability to really see if they're actually doing it in a notebook. If you did it in a Google Sheet that was shared with you, you could quickly kind of go through and see if they are actually following along and taking the notes that you would like them to be. And then the last one I have for you today is progress monitoring. So when I was doing this, I had the idea of kind of like a special education IEP objective in mind, but it really could be used to monitor progress on any goal. So I have it formatted with checkboxes, objectives, the goal, and the progress bar. So again, if you click that, it will automatically template it for you. But essentially, you're directing students to what their goal is and what their progress is based on each of those trials and attempts. And then remember, if you ever get stuck, all Google apps have a help center. So those images have the direct links to the support site and training center. So you can go there. They will probably have every question you could ever imagine, from the basics of getting started with it, editing and formatting, formulas and functions. There's so much that a Google Sheet can do for you. So if you're not sure, check that help center first before kind of going through all the work and doing it yourself. On that left bottom is also a quick start guide to Sheets. That's more kind of the generic how to get started, where's the where things are, those kind of things, but they're right there for you. Also, please, in the presentation is a link to a Shining a Spotlight on Sheets intro feedback survey for me that just goes to me. It's an anonymous survey to let me know how this training went, what you thought of it, what went well, what I could improve on in the future, so that as I continue these, I know where to go. And last, I just wanted to leave you with my contact information one more time. So remember, even after this training, I'm more than happy to help you work through anything Google Sheets related. It's Tara@gfe-trainer.com. So thank you so much for joining me today for this webinar on Shining a Spotlight on Google Sheets, and I hope you'll join me for more in the future.